What's happening? Where are you in the world right now?
I'm on Vancouver Island at the moment.
And how's the nature and the stillness out there?
It's pretty fantastic. Just lots and lots of natural rhythms,
Hmm.
which I find very, very helpful for all of the stillness type work and really anything else. Because as far as I can tell at this point, anything that we're going to do is going to have its grounding in what is.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I think. What are you What are you finding? Like, you spend a lot of time. I mean, I see a lot of your footage and your content. You're spending a lot of time outdoors,
I just
and
figured out how to make things bigger. 1 second. All right. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
no, that's all good. That's all good. A lot of your content sort of like gives the impression that you are spending a lot of time outdoors in nature, and this is wonderful because it's always very pleasant to watch and listen. And um, you know, and how do you find when you sort of engage? I mean, I'm doing a little bit of speculation here because I'm not sure because, like I said, we've only just connected. But what are you finding when you sort of dip back into the everyday world? How jarring can that be, or are you're generally pretty chill and things because it's pretty wild out there, man. And like when you're spending so much time in beauty and peaceful and harmony, the natural world, and then coming back in, it must be something.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on, uh, I guess, what part of the cycle you might be in.
Mhm.
Because, like, as anyone who's done a lot of in-depth work will recognize, there's definite cycles to where you're at, and these rhythms, these flux, these flows, and in some parts of those ways, there is, vast stores and sums of equanimity that we're existing within. And at some parts of those phases, you're like really walking the razor's edge of your own growth, which is also your own demonic horror. And if you go into society at that point, then it's a bit of a kick in the nads. And if you go in at one of the high equanimity parts, and in conjunction with that, maybe the energy is very strong and it's very easy to um, allow things to move through and change and alter and tweak as necessary, then it's a different experience. So definitely very, very different potentials depending on where you're at.
Hmm. Wonderful, thank you. Great response. Yeah, I think too. One thing I've noticed myself is that the more I sort of engage in this work, there are cycles that we can get caught up in, or that we can ride, or that we can essentially neutralize ourselves to some extent. Some are very overpowering and what's the word? Not coercive, but it's very hard. Not it's very hard not to get caught up in things, even with that, even with the high level chops that we may presume to have. And I mean, obviously, I'm in a metro kind of urban area, and so I'm feeling it all around me. I can feel the neighborhood, so to speak. And we've got a lot of stuff happening in New Zealand here that's prompting all sorts of responses and things like that. And I've got to say, like, I've got to go out. I'm very blessed to have a section of forest out the back of my property where I can just go and just recalibrate myself with what seems to be more of what harmony is. And but yeah, cycles are cycles, and we've just hit spring here, and the one oak tree is fully in bloom. It's all nice and lush and green, and the other one is yet to sprout. And you can stand between them and almost go, yeah, there's a almost a contrast here, and you can kind of feel even though they're the same species, there is a time delay, and that can kind of be picked up on. Sorry, I'm talking about a bunch of stuff here, but I'd actually really love to hear from you. You're Mr. Adventure, and I'd love to hear what you've been up to and what you got coming up, man. I mean, we are going to do a one-to-one special talk at one point in the near future too, so we can flesh out a bit more detail. But tell us what's happening, man.
Oh man, well, I guess we'll just use the platform you just opened up with like these almost like pulling a back a bow and arrow when it comes to time delay and types of resistance and flow, and almost like, I don't know, like a metaphorical proton gradients of life, right? In terms of that cycle that starts to spin and unfold. Um, and I mean, you're in a city and you have some nature behind you. Um, I think one thing is like uh, sometimes we impose restrictions on what harmony can be, right? We often look at it as something static, and we go like when you walk in or walk into a city or roll through for brief periods of time. If you're me, um, there's different layers of harmony that are fluxing and moving, different densities as well that things are working at, and different, how can we put it, like spectrums of equanimity that can be worked through depending on what it is that you're around most. And I found, like, I lived in uh, the city for a long time while doing the same, kind of pretty in-depth work. And I mean, there's definitely something to going on retreats, or I did one of those with a bunch of people at a center. And then I was like, you know what? I think I can do this on my own. And, you don't have the 4 people that are sick in your room when you're trying to sleep and all that kind of stuff. But there's something to going outside of society and outside of those rhythms and those particular densities to experience with ease higher densities and higher frequencies, and really get out of that space. I mean, if you go back into more traditional trainings, like they're often like years worth of vows of silence, right? Um, and what's the value in not speaking, or what's the value in not having anyone to speak to if you're out on your own in the middle of the woods? So, in this sense, it's a little bit environmentally facilitated instead of structured, uh, you know, in temple protocols or whatever that you have to follow. But either way, you don't have the opportunity to engage in all the negative habitual nonsense, that we have going on. You get to experience that in its full power with just you and yourself. And I find that the speed at which we can grow is drastically increased, because you never have to go down and clean the daily lower end, kind of lower astral dense stuff out of your experience. You can just start from where you left off the day before, which is great. And then you keep ba 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 ba, and then when you do experience or have to work through that denser stuff, sometimes the contrast is pretty monumental, because you might not have had to look at it or have it, shoved in your face with too much regularity. So, there's a lot of adventure on all spectrums, whether you're in the city and you're learning how to harmonize and neutralize that stuff that's working at those particular layers of density. And when you have the opportunity to not need to deal with that, then that can have its own positive attributes as well as its own pitfalls. There's always like pros and cons to everything, depending, I think, on what we want to look at. I don't know, what's it like for you?
Yeah, I like you said, that contrast word is such a valuable tool. It offers you like, and I like what you said with the bow and the arrow too. But yeah, as far as contrast goes, like, I'll go up into the village. I have a beautiful little village up here that's part of my, I'm part of my life, part of my love. I got to say, I go up there and I talk to the peeps, go and see some friends and colleagues and just people out on the street, and then I'll come back and I really notice the difference between. It's a stark contrast. It really is between those two sorts of worlds, if you want to call it that. But it offers opportunity as well. Like if we're just in the peaceful platitudes all the time, we kind of, that contrast gives us almost something to remind us of, like, where we've come from in a sense, and and gives us a 180 direction. Well, not necessarily a 180, but we know what comes with that when we enter into that world. And if we bring some heavier weights back with us, and we've got to clean those off, what I find is that I become far more appreciative and grateful for what I have discovered. And also, when I go back out into the world and interact with that, it's a good reminder to go, okay, there's still value in there. I like interacting with people, but I have to say, it's unfortunate, but I've become a little snobby, I think, about I'm not just throwing myself back out in the world because, I just find I just haven't got the gas for it. I want to plug all that extra juice that I've created back into the training. And so I'm learning to meter, I guess, and find the sweet spot of interacting with, I'm not going to call it the old world, but, like I've come from corporate, and I've come from working in schools, and I've come from leading I had a very public profile, and that, I struggle to do that now. I just find it intensely draining, even with all the practice. And so I've just got to be conscious of that. And so, the people, my circle is much smaller, and I want to, give the best of myself. And I know what kind of takes away from that. And that kind of tells me that I'm still in a developmental stage as well, because I'm sure that once I'm a high rolling, wizard, that I can just walk through any battlefield and the arrows will just pass straight through me, or any perceived arrows will just pass straight through me because I'm on God mode, whatever. But, as far as contrast goes, it's a very valuable tool, and I appreciate so much more the stillness, which I didn't appreciate until I discovered it, if that makes sense.
Right, of course. I mean, that's something I have very vivid memories of first recognizing that, oh, like, you can just be at peace. Oh, that those dragons rolling around in your stomach, spitting fire all the time,
Yeah.
that those aren't like a mandatory part of experience. And I think, as anything, as soon as we have the perceptual differentiation, then we go, oh wait, what? And boom, like you can just, whoa, and that opens up whole new worlds. I was wondering for you, when because you're talking about sort of this differentiation there between practice and life. Um, do you find that there's circumstances or ways that you engage with going into those sort of society type moments that are not deleterious?
Yeah, great question, brother. Thank you. And I think it's what it is that you, well, what I found is that before I enter into a situation, I will essentially take a moment to compose myself and seek out how there may be seek out the value that I can extrapolate from whatever situation I'm about to put myself into, and go, okay, something's going to happen here. It's going to be whatever it's going to be, and it's going to test my composure. It's going to test my ability to stay upright on this razor thin thing here sometimes, because but I have to say that you never know who you're going to meet or what's going to happen, and that's bringing the adventure back into life when going back out into the world, because there's some people I have in my life that are highly magically charged. You just hang out with them. They're not even into any of this stuff, but you go out with them and they've got something going on. And some of them are very creative people, and lots of things happen. But as far as, back to your question goes, I have to say that, yeah, definitely, a surprise chance meetings. There's lots of there's lots of undercover wise people, sages, and people of potentially great renown in the sense of like they just have a lot of life experience. And I've actually gotten some pretty serious wisdom from the most unlikely places, and I haven't always been looking for it. I think just having that sort of that what do they call it, the mind of the child, or the just that open mind. The what's the name for it? There's a name for it.
Beginner's mind is often used.
Perfect, thank you. Beginner's mind. That is a very helpful attitude to adopt, especially when going out into a very busy sort of astral world where people are wanting to talk about things that maybe you have very little interest in. But you can still offer perspective, I think, without sort of maybe getting caught in the weeds, because some people want to test you out to see where your loyalties or preferences lie, perhaps on the polarized spectrums of whether it's something of like politics or sport or something like this. And I think that there's always something to offer there. So I think what it is that there's always the opportunity to share a perspective and to walk in that world without getting caught up in it, but still being in it, perhaps. So I'm hoping that sort of like covered what you were sort of aiming at there.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aiming at trying to make you say anything. It was
No, no,
just
no.
a curiosity. You failed.
Oh man. Oh.
uh, no, that's really well said. That's often, I mean, like a lot of folks, like I've spent years in like pretty uh, intense solitude training practice mode, that kind of stuff. And one thing I certainly was missing out on, and was um, almost opposed to, was, I think, literally the other 50% of the training, which is, it's not about training, it's not about practice, it's not about the exercises. Uh, those are all just tools. Those are all just doorways to open you up to potentials, and those potentials reflect and manifest through the other half of life, which is, I think, like you so aptly put, the various types of synchronicities that occur, who you meet, opportunities that open up to you, um, all of this interesting stuff. And when you start looking back at cause and effect, and you start looking back at greater and greater arcs of time, um, and how one thing leads to another, and intuitional decisions that are made, um, whatever might be there, there's some pretty phenomenal things that, and patterns that you start to notice. If I hadn't done A, then this whole cascade of events would never have occurred that led to this thing right now. Um, and I think that's often an undervalued aspect of inquiry in the practice, is how you engage in life. And when you have, like you put it, that mind of the child, or that beginner's mind, that openness to learning, that curiosity, that deep, insatiable curiosity to, as the great and recently deceased Tom Brown Jr. would put it, like, what's this teaching me? Or as he would say, like, what this mean? Um, and what's this teaching me? When you have that deeply instilled, then everything becomes a really peculiar source of inspiration, because you can look at it at lower densities, which I don't mean that is like bad. I just mean closer to physical densities of, like, okay, what happened? What happened here? And what's going on? And then you start going into more and more refined, or lighter densities, and it's like, whoa, you start looking at higher types of attunements and relationships at all these different levels. And there's so much like fascination and fun that's going on that, I mean, for me, if I'm out by myself, sometimes the only interaction I'll have with another person will be like, hey, how you doing with the grocery clerk, uh, a couple times in a month, and I might not have a conversation, like an actual conversation with somebody, for more than a month on end, weeks on
Mm.
end. And what's I find very interesting is that when those do come about, the value given to them is much greater because they're in scarce supply. And if we have a million interactions we have to deal with every single day, then we put less value on the people that
Mm.
we're talking with, on what they have, what they offer, how they do contribute to that synchronicity, because literally everything that has ever happened and all of ever has led to this, wherever you happen to be right
Mm.
now, which is pretty mind-boggling
Yeah.
uh, concept to just exist with, which means every decision, not just like individual people stuff, but like all of comet impacts and weirdness and cosmic dust weirdness, and like there's everything, all of the stuff. And you really start to tap into that interconnectedness. And so sometimes, I've had just vast, I don't know, oceans of gratitude open up at something as simple as someone saying good morning to me,
Mm.
just because it was so foreign, so out of the usual, just me and birds and stuff, right? So I find that there's a lot of value in that side of life, and uh, the interactions with people, with other situations as well, animals. They can be a wonderful source of feedback, for what's going on. Are you leaning against a tree and, when I was doing a lot of that type of work, just sit with a tree and like, raccoons are using me and squirrels as like branches to go up the tree, and
Mm.
that's a pretty good indicator that you're pretty still internally and you're pretty at one with the environment. And when you start thinking a lot and getting all antsy and up in your head, it's like, what's that? Like, I thought that was a tree. And so you can open up to these different rhythms. Um, like, I don't know these days. I don't know if I could deal with, going back and living in society normally. Uh, and so because of that, I look at everyone who is, man, and like the students that I have that come through, um, and what they're doing and how much they're working with, and I just have like so much respect at when we
Mm.
tune in and work together, because it's like, holy crap, like, you're a parent of one, two, three, four, five kids. You got like, a partner, you got a job, you're doing this, that, the other thing, and also doing this spiritual stuff. Um, it's so easy to kind of pedestalize ourselves, but when you look at like actually how this stuff at play and this stuff at how it works, I find it just fascinating, like how people can be masterful in their own lives, which is not necessarily equivalent to being exceptional at what we might think of as spiritual skill sets, but then we hold ourselves back by imposing a shape on what it is to be good at spiritual skill sets.
Mm.
And often the people most damaging, to overall good stuff can be spiritual folks. As much as we don't like to acknowledge that, if we look at ourselves and look at how much freaking arrogance they were like, oh, me, uh, I can tap a frequency, you can't, blah blah blah. There's so much posturing that goes on, in our own psychology, that I think it really does a good number on us to step back and like appreciate. And there's a thing that keeps popping up on my screen here, and appreciate and respect what you know more normal folks are doing, but not impose normal on them. We're all sort of the protagonist in our own story, so to speak.
Yeah, wonderful. I just want to quickly say, is that thing that's popping up, do you think it's related to the live streaming software that we're using?
It says, well, yeah, because I've never seen it before. I think it's just letting me know that the reception or service might be in and out. Due to
Oh, okay.
limited bandwidth, there is a possibility of significant reduction to your video quality, which is fine by me.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You're
I
coming
like
through,
the
I think.
grainy version of Phil.
Well, it hides the blemishes. Um, but
Yeah, you look so young.
well, there's no schmoozing. I'm not using any of the schmoozing aspects on the software here that can make me look young and pretty. I find that really interesting, actually. Like when you see photos of people, like back in the day when I used to do the dating apps, like years ago when I tried that, and never went anywhere, of course, because it's just tiresome. But these pictures of people and they're like 10 years old, and it's like you meet them in real life, and it's like there's nothing wrong with you, man. When you just put your thing up. But but yeah, you're right. I have mass respect, and I've come to respect the fact because I've got friends who've got, like you said, a bunch of kids, and they're doing training, and they might be doing a great work as well, and they got time to put in a couple of hours a day, and they're learning a language, and they're playing a sport, or they're socializing, and they're managing to fit everything in. And because I used to be very busy, and whether I was a music teacher or working in corporate, like insanely busy, and trying to pick up on that rhythm again, I don't know, man. Like like it's like once you go down this track, I've got some friends who've been down this track, hardcore, and then decided to go back into the world, and have made it work quite successfully. But yeah, I've got a lot of respect for those people as well, because making it all work and fitting it all in, and like you said, if you are having lots of conversations, I find that there's an energetic exchange, and there's a payment that happens when you have all these active considerations going on in your life. You've just met up with someone here and someone here and someone here throughout the day, and you might have those bridges still connected, and you're thinking about those things, and doing that kind of like simple observer training where you just recede back into the mind, and you see, oh, I didn't realize that I was still engaging those thought patterns or something. Some of these things can happen without you knowing, and uh, but yeah, I think I have a lot of people in my life, and I think about a lot of people, and I think about a lot of things, and that comes with the territory of just being, by the virtue of being in a situation where there's lots of people around me, and I'm very blessed to have a little section of forest out the back that I can uh, relocate myself into, and just sort of tune into that. And like you said, man, I tell you what, when the stillness is on, when I'm in this, I don't have this really a seated place, but I move into a beautiful standing posture and just float myself. And then all of a sudden, the birds will start coming up and getting a little more curious, and they'll come up nice and close, and they'll want to hang out. And it's like, okay, that's a good feedback monitor for um, just my demure, or my sense of expression, that the animals can pick up on at a very subtle level. So, and now I've got a question in the chat, actually, for that we
There's a
can both
chat.
attend to. There's a chat. We've got people. We've got about 8 people in the chat here, and
Oh, hey guys.
yeah. Hey, yeah, that's a great idea. I just better do a shout out to everyone. Welcome, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us on this very impromptu catch up with Mr. Nathan Szredni. Oh man, Szredni. I'm
Don't
that's
worry about it.
I won't, but it's nice to take on the challenge of new things. So yeah, if anyone's in the chat and's got a question for Nathan, myself, Nathan or myself or Nathan, or anywhere and anything in between, please throw it in. Let us know how the audio and video quality is, how the new format's looking. I'm still playing with it. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us, Nathan. And Nathan, if you need to disappear, you just let me know too, bro. But I'll throw this question up from Will Blackett. Where are we? Hi, guys. Pore breathing and building the ball in different natural settings. Rasmus, meaning Mr. Mark Rasmus, who I know Nathan knows quite well, has some thoughts on this subject. How about you two? Well, Nathan, I'll throw this to you first. Pore breathing and building the ball in different natural settings.
The more time that you spend venturing into different settings in relation to cultivating an ever increasing, we might use the word sensitivity or receptibility to frequency, will give you vast libraries of differentiation. So number one is build awareness. And we look at like pore breathing or building the ball as, this is an introduction, a way to just start to tap in. Maybe you're working with that sensation between your hands, then you pop that into pore breathing through a field or running it through different internal like facial harmonies or energetic type through flows and stuff. Now, the energy that we're working with, there's there's infinite things. There's infinite frequencies you can tap, and ways to begin differentiating are would include anything in nature. So, for example, and I include everything in society in that statement. So, a big waterfall, for example, is absolutely phenomenal and will give you. It's hugely rejuvenating. Whatever is happening ionically or whatever, I'm not 100% sure. But if you practice in that type of environment, just it's crazy. Giant old growth trees, also phenomenal. Now, both those things are great for, say, strength of energy. Bigger the waterfall, more energy that's going to be there. Bigger the trees, more energy that's going to be there. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily better. You can find, let's say, like a Zen garden, for example. You start to find these amalgamations of humanity and nature as they start to work together. And there's a different type of peace in those settings where the organizational function of the human mind is coming into relationship with natural flow and setting. And those are often, deeply peaceful types of places that you can explore. So the point being, as you become as pore breathing and being tuned to energy at as much of the vibrational scale as you're capable of, as this becomes second nature, everywhere that you go is different. Everywhere is its own micro niche, and you can get a lot out of it. And you will start through that awareness to go, oh, okay, if I am feeling this way, I know that going to this particular type of environment is really, really helpful. And this slowly starts to expand to a level of skill where you can bring those environments through your own energetic skill sets and development to wherever you happen to be in the moment. Typically, this is done quite well through the Akasha. And so, I've spent time loading these areas. I'll go to these areas and I'll load them into an amulet. And that's an easy path back. And then, of course, with different gradations of Akashic skill, you can get back to areas in a different way as well. That said, actually go to the areas with your actual real body and the thing of you that is, according to most people and things around you that has exterior, and go to those places in real life and spend time there and change places, and you'll get to notice a difference. I remember one waterfall hike I went on it was somewhere in the States. There was like 12 giant waterfalls that you would get closer to, and then you'd experience the difference as you got closer to that energy. And then as you started walking away further, you could feel the change as it subsides, and then you get closer to the next one and you feel a change again. And so differentiation is the key. Differentiation is the key to building awareness and cultivating awareness of this stuff. And so the difference between a giant tree and a waterfall, if you can figure that out, cool. If you know where there's a waterfall, start paying attention well before you get to it. Start pore breathing well before you get to it so you can observe the change, because we will fall into the habit so easily of, just things normalize. We don't experience the difference anymore. So we can't differentiate, which means we can't consciously tap it. And that's a really big part of all this stuff, is working purposefully with awareness of cosmic forces. And as you do this, this will lead into differentiation into, more subtle energetic spectrums, such as like Kabbalistic studies, planetary and constellational studies, and so much more. End of thought. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, so basically what you said, and I will just butt that up with it as well and say, look, so when I discovered Qi Gong, okay, so I saw this wonderful video and by Mark Rasmus saying go up to a tree and do this kind of stuff. There's several videos on it. So I go up to this tree down the back, and it's a particular species, and mentally transfer into it. Okay, wow. Okay, so this is what I'm noticing. It's a bit of this and a bit of that. And then I went into the to the next tree, which was a different species, and was like, oh, this is different. Okay, it feels like this and that. Okay, there's a contrast between these two species. Now the third tree was the same as the first tree in species, but it was a bit bigger. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, it feels the same as the first tree. Isn't that interesting? So, but it feels more. There's a substantialness increase to it that's more. And so what I'm doing is that this is I'm not pore breathing at this point. I'm not building the ball to answer the audience member's question here. But what I'm saying is that you know uh, engaging these types of activities that deal with subtlety and nuance, I've found have brought a new appreciation and new value to these exercises that I discovered, because some natural situations, like you said, if a waterfall versus a tree, they're natural, it's quite a wide term, but they do offer their own kind of idiosyncratic or uniqueness that can be differentiated. Now, if you don't spend a lot of time in nature and you're just getting into these practices, everything will just be like, wow, awesome, this is great. But when you're able to zero in on what separates how things are different, the different similarities and the similar differences, and you can separate those. I've made a note. I'm going to find out what the story is about this thing that you have to keep tapping, because it's I'm sure there's a way to turn it off. But yeah, as far as pore breathing and building the ball goes, I mean, they're separate exercises, but they come together. And I just want to say, obviously, discovering Mark's work was monumental over the last bunch of years of like going, because everyone knows how to do this generally, and they'll get a 2-minute exposition to it. But when you mix that with the pore breathing and you go, oh, wow, okay, I can see how this opens doors. What I'd say is that if you're experimenting with this, set yourself in different natural settings, because some are going to they're going to have different flavors to them, and you're going to have different experiences. But before you can start dealing with nuance and subtlety, you have to deal with the just the big natural experience that you may first encounter in the initial stages. And then you can start to go, oh, wait a minute, they're similar, but they're different. And being able to notice that by developing our perceptual capabilities through the practices, that's when we find new hidden treasures to explore as well. Pore breathing, so important to be able to learn how to intrinsically feel with your feeling bodies, and building the ball puts it outside of you so that you're not basically having your awareness captured by your physiological activities. Digestive processes can be very noisy if you're eating and then going out and practicing. There's a lot of detail and small things that can impact how you experience it. But when you start with the big, gross ball of like natural magical experience, and then you learn how to slowly slice and dice and chop that up, and like you said, then you get to Kabbalistic frequencies and planetary, zodiacal, and so on. And that's when you're really getting into, you're building your catalog of metaphysical experiences, for lack of a better term. Sorry. Anyway,
Yeah, absolutely. There's one more thing that are we good?
Yeah, no, we're all good.
Hear?
Sorry. Yeah, you're all good. Go for it.
Perfect. There's one more thing that I wanted to add in, because I think it's a pretty constant theme, which is by all means, you have your specific practice where you go as deep as possible. But this stuff is so much more than practicing. It's like a word I don't even use for myself anymore. Um, there's like yes, you're touching into all this stuff, and yeah, there's differentiation, and there's this cascade of awareness. But this is like it's you, and it's your life as it is. So you're as Phil brought up, out on an online internet date, you can feel with these perceptions. You can feel where that resonance is or not. You walk in a grocery store, you can touch a piece of food, and you can feel for contraction. You can feel like your
Yeah.
liver hurt or whatever, and you're like, oh fuck, like that's not going with that. Or you touch a different supplement or a different food or whatever, and you go, oh, whoa, like you can feel immediately the expansiveness. And this is what we have to look at this beyond practice. All of the practice is it's like learning scales, on your piano or rudiments. You play drums or whatever, you're learning how to use the instrument, and exercises are to bring awareness to the instrument. But
Mm.
you gotta
Helpful.
play music. Like you really gotta learn how to play music. And through the hard-headed discipline of practice, or the pride taken in practice, we often lose out on life, or the song that's actually there, which is this music of life. And these notes, these rhythms, these melodies, they're moving all the time. It's all moving. And this stuff is for real life. I was chatting with a friend recently who was walking somewhere in the Australian nature, which is full of death, and
Everything's trying
you
to
know,
kill you.
yeah, and so he gets an image of I think I call it a brown, some poisonous snake, like a brown snake or something, and then later on down the trail sees it, and like this is where clairvoyance, from a very practical standpoint,
Mm.
is expressed, where all the clair skills are expressed. It's not about being clairvoyant so you can be special, right? Like we get involved in this stuff when we start thinking we're special, but these skills are there. Are they for evolution? Absolutely, but also for survival.
Mm.
Um, and and this is like a lot of this stuff is arises as a byproduct of wanting to be not dead. Um, when we're walking around, right? These sixth senses, or knowing, being able to feel the magnetism of water from great distances, or essentially dousing without rods, being able to feel underground, or feel for minerals that you might need in your body, maybe where plants are growing that might have more of those particular minerals you're missing out on. Um, like it's absolutely endless. So I just want to open that door in the mindscape of anyone who's listening, that this is it's not a different life. The practicer, or in the practice and life, it's not a difference. You're not practicing, oh, like great, I have this opportunity to practice. It's life. It's one thing. And in the beginning, yes, there's differentiation, because we're opening and awakening all these different capabilities and capacities, and that's very natural. But the movement towards unification is that it's a good goal to have, to really settle into this unification, because that's where the purpose comes from. That's where the deeper purpose comes from, and that's where deeper connection and deeper power is, and deeper dissolution comes through that purpose and through that connection. And it's very difficult to have purpose that's valuable if we're isolating ourselves from everything else that exists, to go, I'm practicing this thing now. So unification is a really great thing to have in the back of our minds as we do this. End of thought, Phil.
Now, while you were talking there so wonderfully, I just thought I'd better put up some stuff to give the bro a plug here while I'm playing with the software. So, taichiinstitute.ca and YouTube Maverick Mystic is the best place for people to find your work. So I just wanted to put
Definitely.
this in.
It might be the Maverick Mystic.
The Maverick Mystic. Oh, yes, you're right. It is too. Sorry. Hang on. Let's get that squared away. There we go. Look at that. Oh, it updates it on the fly. That's pretty flash. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I have to say one thing that got pointed out to me is that the exercises could be considered to be fingers pointing at the moon, and a lot of focus can end up
Use
being a
that
finger.
example quite often.
Yeah, it's a great example because it's really intriguing. Like there's the process, but then there's where the process leads you, and I mean, I found myself being enamored by the process as well, but it's like, well, exalting the process. It's more like just get on with the process and then things will unfold. But you're right. I mean, these are essentially tools to help us make good on life. I mean, and you made a perfect example. I mean, real world applications. You walk up to a food choice that you're considering. You haven't even read the label. And I encourage people to read labels. You pick the item up off the shelf and you just feel like a contraction or an expansion, or you feel a body state or some kind of response come on that makes you go, ooh. And then you can try it out if you want and see how you feel. It may not be instantaneous, but I mean, forethought or consideration or some kind of premonition of sorts of the of an outcome. Because I think, in my view, there's if we want to use the word evolution, especially self-induced evolution, it wants to happen. And you're going to get nudges about when things go against that, in a sense as well. I think there's a desire for things to evolve and change for the better, and or maybe it's not, and maybe those things both exist, whatever. But when it comes to food choices, if you like feeling like crap, then you can use that too, right? Like, oh, this food, but I'm picking up this piece of food, I feel terrible. Great, I'm going to get it. Or I feel this piece of food. Oh, I feel good. This feels like a positive direction. So it helps you set up your compass for decision making. Because what I'm finding is that improved decision making leads to good outcomes. And that for me, I've got to say, after being a muso and make
What's
and
that mean?
a musician, and like performing and being a teacher in that, and hanging out with the with live performance crowds and hospitality world, late nights drinking, and in all sorts of other things that go on in that environment. you know uh, there's certain things that I personally don't want to revisit, and there's a cost to those things. And sometimes sometimes things can leave a bit of a stain, and that stain can take a while to come out. And so you can essentially avoid unhelpful things that you're already aware of, because you have a deep embedded sense of like, oh yes, if I do this, then that happens. The same with the food choice. And so things that help us navigate life for better outcomes, higher quality decision making, best practices, this is where it is. And I've got friends who have trained with Mark, actually. I know him quite well. I've lived with him and things like that. And they live very much undercover everyday lives now. And, they take full benefit from the efforts of the practices that they've engaged in. Just for everyday life, they've got families, they've got jobs, and they've got things like this. But essentially they've got an edge, if I may put it like that, an edge to living life, because they're able to perceive things outside of the normal spectrum of ability.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, it starts to get weird, like what you can pick up on, and there's this is where purpose becomes important, and being a what almost whatever this means to you, but not quite whatever, like a good person, developing the actual individual, which ideally happens as a byproduct of working with more and more refined frequency. But sometimes there's some not so good folks out there who do this type of work. And if you're increasing your edge, so to speak, you can be doing a fair bit of harm, which of course is a cause for uplifting effects at some other point as well. So hard to really cast judgment on anything. But it's definitely worth pursuing. Like, okay, what are the motivations? And if you have an edge, that's pretty useful. And having the mindset of that sort of synchronistic mindset, it allows for the potential of edges to manifest more and more, because instead of going like, okay, this is what I want and this is the only thing that can happen, uh, you start going like, oh, okay, where's this leading? What are the potentials that come out of this thing? And to be open to that, to explore with joy and excitement, whatever starts to, rear its head in your path, and to not have a definitive shape or form that has to take, and that it can keep growing and changing. That's a pretty cool place to be. And it definitely, I think, enhances the capacity to stay tuned to that edge, because you're open.
Yeah, I love that, man. Thank you. You're right. And man, I have to say, like, the old patterns of thinking are hard. They're well-worn wagon ruts or grooves. They've left score lines that will, or scar tissue, or they're just there, and we work on those, moving past them or dissolving them or whatever. But this idea of just being open to, whatever might happen, with a sort of like, it's like, oh, this is the old opportunities that we may have shied away from or been averse to have now become, oh, I kind of see things in a whole new way now, and it's very refreshing. It's like the sort of it reopens up the adventure of life, where things that may have been tired old tropes are actually like opportunities for exploration, and the harvest potential, whatever that is, whether it's wisdom, stillness, or just a fun outing, sort of takes on a new look. Things that may have been undesirable before suddenly have a kind of you can pick up on the opportunity, or there's a desire that's emerged that wasn't there before to engage certain things, and it makes life much more pleasant and interesting. Because I got to say that the world that's sort of put forward to us through the media and through the everyday life, and that there's not much going on there, to be honest. I'm not really, I need to stay engaged with the world, and I like to have things that I can talk to people about, that are relevant, that I think are helpful and whatever, and that. But there's some things that I struggle with having conversations about, with small talk and things like that. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the practices go, it helps to give me a new angle of how, if you're able to have someone's time, if somebody gives you their time in conversation, I'm starting to recognize that is actually like a blessing, to have someone's attention and time, that somebody is giving you that. And that's why I want to say thank you to everyone on the chat that's watching and listening. Thank you so much. Please make sure you go check out Nathan's work. I've put it here. He's regularly on YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram and all these places, and you can find his work there. Please go and follow him. He's got lots of wonderful thoughts and wisdoms to share, and he's always out in nature. So he's out there. He's on the job. He's out there in nature. What's the report? What are the trees saying, Nathan? What are they telling us, man?
Coming to you live. Yeah, listen.
Perfect.
Period.
That's it. What a great time. Let's bring up your I'm going to play with something here. I'm going to add your website to the screen. Oh, I'll see if I can get this
cool.
right. Yeah. I'll bring this out the front, and I'll see if I can make it bigger. And it just, okay, so I'm not sure how to do this, so I'm going to figure it out. Oh, here we go. And I'll pull that off. Okay, here we go. All right, sweet. So here's your wonderful, awesome, amazing website, Maverick Mystic Arts. I love that. One of my favorites that you came up was MMA, Mixed Magical Arts. I thought that was really cool.
Well, Maverick Mystic Arts is MMA.
Oh, that's true. Oh, bro, well done. That's nice, man. I love that. That's great. Okay. So
Yeah,
so
get that easy mistaken clicks, right?
yeah, that's the one. That's how you play it, man. I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so you're offering a pretty wide range of things, and obviously, uh, one thing that we both share is that we've both got music in a core. I know I am aware that you've been a drummer or are a drummer, and so that can play. I found having a previous life as a music teacher has given me so many wonderful analogies to draw from, and so I'm sure that some of that conversation possibly comes up in your teachings too. I find it very easy to relate to a lot of people on the ground, on the street
Oh,
level, with
yeah.
using musical
Have
analogies.
you noticed? I mean, uh, have you noticed that musicians, or I mean, you have your history as a musician, but also like people who are currently doing music have sort of an easy in to a lot of the energetic skills.
Oh yeah, it's a great platform for starting. Actually, I think it offers, um, especially if they've learned to really listen. They learn to pay attention to what they're doing and creating. But yeah, I think too, and if they're working on their ear, and that gives them a good door in for things like clairaudience too. But there's a yeah, so yeah, I totally agree. Have you got? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because you're, obviously seen some things yourself, and I'm sure some of your students, you find some language there that makes it easier to share information via.
Yeah, I mean, it comes through like just the metaphors are pretty second nature, and definitely the openness to what do they call it when brains link up? There's some fancy name for it.
Oh, like
Um,
mirror neurons or
yeah, like
neuroplasticity or something.
yeah, there's some name. Oh, entrainment, brain entrainment. That's
Right.
the
Yeah.
word for it.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so like if you're playing, you're just jamming, and suddenly like you and the bass player, if you're playing drums, like hit the same shots uh,
Yep.
just out of the blue that so you start to opens doors for building a sense of faith in the more subtle what worlds and realms in a way that's palatable to
Mm.
uh, a
Mm.
Western mind if you're stuck in that spot, because that's one of the biggest sticking points is like, and we take so much pride in it, like you know, the kind of the secularist mindset that takes so much pride in like, oh, just a coincidence, oh, just this, that, the other thing, oh, just sense, or oh, like you were noticing like micro expressions and micro movements in the bass player before having, and then you're going like, well, you had your eyes closed. And oh well, you felt the stage move. Well, probably, but all of these things contribute. It's not in isolation. All
Mm.
the minute physical expressions of subtlety are come out of the deeper energetic movements that are occurring, and whatever frequency that's on, whether it's like the mental plane and that's where you're connecting with, or if it's working through astral sublayers and emotional type areas, or whether you're channeling stuff like through a group all as one, whatever's going on, like I don't know, there's so much potential there. And hell, I mean, like look at like the war dance, and it's Pole, the mating dance, and it's using music to create union. It's essentially like transmission without needing energetic skills.
Perfect.
It's like the I don't know, prehistoric transmission. I don't know what you'd call it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's so much there, man. I think there's a lot there. If you scroll down a little on the page there, um, little more. There we go. There is a retreat coming up, and I managed to technology the the countdown of days there.
Woo, what it is.
So this is in Powell River, British Columbia, Canada, and it's a 7-day retreat. And we have a nice spot, this yoga studio that has exercise equipment, so we can work on some of the energy strength training components as well.
Awesome.
And I'll just, for people who are into it, you can check it out. Or if you're in the area, uh, we won't be doing Fajin type stuff. That's my teaching's gone in a much different direction. But certainly all of the energetic cultivation and tuning and awareness, nature connection, this will all be a part of it, along with the energy strength training and aspects of partner work to facilitate certain openings, but not it's not about like bouncing people and that kind of stuff. It's just for I keep getting emails from people asking about that stuff, and it's a direction that I'm not going these days at the moment.
Fair enough. And I've got to say, after sort of just like briefly dipping my toe into the Tai Chi community, going, oh man, there's a whole bunch of conversations I'm glad I'm not part of yet. I'm keen to get into more Tai Chi actually, but as soon as you get into Fa Jin and that, man, it's like, geez, it's a bit of a battleground out there. And I've touched hands with people and floated them just from watching Mark's videos. I've figured it out, and there's a thing going on there. I'm completely satisfied by it. But yeah, I you know, for whatever reasons you're choosing to do that, I appreciate the fact that you're making yourself available to people, and you are obviously available for you know, one-to-one coaching via the internet and things as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do video lessons online. Those are 2 hours in length. It's the time I feel it takes to really give the most, and for someone to receive the best that I can. So those are 2 hours in length. People can hit me up if they're interested. You can tell my computer skills are somewhat failing going through that and all the different angles of
I
pictures.
love it. It's variety. That's what it is. It's
Yeah, there
variety.
we go. This is the spice of life. Um, is my poor tech skills. Um, so yeah, there's private video lessons are available. I was looking into potentially doing like webinar type things. I do like the private sessions. People really seem to get a lot of value out of those. Um, and if there's interest, I'll do webinars and stuff for people. If there's groups that are interested, and then if I happen to be in somebody's area, then of course there's live training, and these workshops that we're scheduling here in BC for in-person training.
Wonderful.
A
All
couple
right.
of interviews up there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
well,
and
that's
it's so
great.
cool. Like that picture for the workshop there.
Down, down, up, up. Which one?
Wherever it is. Yeah, yeah, there it is. Like that was lower or higher. I can't remember anymore. Lower. Um, it'll
Like
pop
this?
up with the time stuff. But like, there's cool. Like that's just in a hotel. That mandala is the zodiac, right? Like if you pop up just scroll up a touch there, or
Oh, yes.
the other
Yeah, yeah.
way. Stop. Yeah, like there. Like that's the zodiac in the background. This is just on the wall of a hotel, right? Like
Uh,
there's stuff like this everywhere, and you might never notice it. So it's kind of fun. Like I mean, this is like you've had Michael Lamb on your show before, and like
oh,
that
yeah. He's
dude's
great.
such an inspiration. Like he knows everything about everything, and the amount of joy that you can and excitement that you can find in just like literally anything as you start opening up to relationships between knowledge and the energies itself. It's pretty cool, and you start finding these things all over the place that like people are just kind of tuned to.
Yeah.
um whether it's like just shapes and the energy and shapes and all kinds of fun stuff that you'll find all over the place, and we don't necessarily pick up on it consciously, but it's there. And I mean that's just one example of it.
Man, your website's got heaps of cool stuff on it. And you're, you know,
Yeah, so
you're
that
regular.
picture there, that's in Nepal, which was fun. That mountain there, yeah, underneath that, it's you're on it there. Just like talking about fun places to tune in and practice. Sunset mountaintops.
There you go, man. I tell you what. Well, Nathan and I are going to catch up for a sort of a not so much of a planned one, but we're going to definitely catch up again and talk some more because I want to probe the bro about some Tai Chi and stuff like that because I've got a few Tai Chi people I want to get on the channel here who have trained with Mark and also are into esoteric topics as well. please go to taichiinstitute.ca
Cool.
and check out Nathan's YouTube channel, the Maverick Mystic, because he's regularly uploading stuff from wherever he's traveling around the world. He gets around a bit, our Nay, and please support him. He has so much great content. He's an excellent explainer of things too. And I would encourage you all to, please explore his content. Reach out to him. Like you said, he offers solo work. And I agree with what you say. I found 1 hour sessions with people to be too short. There's not enough absorption, essentially, with short sessions. I find 90 to 120 to be a good amount of time. I'm just wanted to add that on. But Nathan, have you got any closing comments before we part ways, sir?
For just folks listening,
yeah, man.
Yeah, just have fun. Have fun. It's life. Enjoy it. All this stuff is here for the improvement of life in various functions and capacities. So find something that you like, and if it excites you to a certain degree, dive in a little bit and just pull the threads of the experience and let it unwind. It's a fun place to go, and that's all I gotta say, man. Thanks for having me on. This worked out really last minute. I didn't know you were doing it, and then was touching base with Michael and mentioned I had good reception, and he said enjoy Phil's show. So I looked at the other thread and I was like, oh, this will work.
Man, that's perfect. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend, because
Thank you, my friend.
I know you're a busy chap, and I really appreciate you coming on at the last minute to help me out. I mean, I'm doing a little bit of back office stuff here, getting the thing ready, but I'm very grateful for you and your many works and what you bring to the arena as well, because I know a lot of people appreciate what you do. I certainly do. So thank you so much, Nathan. We're going to connect again soon. You stay well, brother. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And I imagine it's probably getting into the evening where you are. So enjoy your Friday evening. And we'll talk again very soon.
Thanks, man. And thank you for your the positive vibes that you bring around. It's unique. It's open. It's unique. And I appreciate you.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you too. And I'm really looking forward to our next catch up. I got a whole bunch of questions for you, sir. And I'll keep in touch with you on the on the chat. And stay well.
All right, sounds good, dude. Bye.